Good day, everyone. I'm Terry.
And I'm Allison.
Welcome to VBS News. Today is January 22nd, 2015. Some of the headline news today for USA are: after a defiant speech, Obama heads to Republican heartland.
US-led coalition against IS meets in London.
After a defiant speech, Obama heads to Republican heartland. A day after delivering a defiant speech, State of the Union, the Republican-led U.S. Congress, President Barack Obama headed to the conservative heartland on Wednesday, January 21st, to promise his plans for bolstering the middle class. Obama is on a two-day trip to Idaho and then to Kansas, where he will be pushing his message that the U.S. economy has recovered from years of the doldrums and that everyone should stand to gain from that. Here's what the middle class requirements in the new economy. Obama says at Boise State University, Idaho, number one, it means helping working families feel more secure in a constantly changing economy. It means helping folks afford childcare and college and pay a level at work and healthcare and retirement. I'm sending Congress a plan that goes to help families with all these issues, lowering the taxes of the working family, putting thousands of dollars back in your pockets each year. Obama said to mostly a crowd of students when he visited the University of Merkin Engineering Center and received the loudest round of applause during the remarks when he said the cost of attending college of the United States should be zero. Both Idaho and Kansas are red or Republican-leading states, which White House officials took into account in an effort to show Obama's policies can be appealing to a bipartisan audience.
The U.S.-led coalition against IS meets in London. 21 members of the U.S.-led coalition against Islamic State, IS, attended a meeting in London on Thursday, January 22nd, to discuss ways of fighting the militant group. The meeting, attended by U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi, will examine ways of intensifying the campaign against IS in Syria, Iraq, and elsewhere by doing more militarily to cut off the group's finances and more to stem the flow of foreign fighters. Iraq's Abadi, who will tell delegates how his government's fight against IS is progressing, met British Prime Minister David Cameron beforehand and asked for more military training and ammunition. Speaking before he hosted a meeting of 21 coalition members in London, Foreign Secretary Philip Hammond said the task of pushing the Islamist militants back would be slow and could take up to 2 years to expel the group. Britain has taken part in airstrikes against IS forces, trained Iraqi troops, and provided some equipment already. Cameron told Abadi that Britain was ready to help, but stopped short of making any new commitments. The meeting is taking place a day after Kurdish forces in northern Iraq said they had cleared IS insurgents from nearly 500 square kilometers of territory and broken a key IS supply line between the city of Mosul and strongholds to the west.
Russia's new peace proposal for Ukraine is occupation plan, says U.S. Russian President Vladimir Putin's new peace proposal for Ukraine is little more than a blueprint for military occupation to secure territory seized by Moscow-backed rebels. The U.S. envoy to the United Nations says on Wednesday, January 22nd, the plan would seek to legalize terrorization gains made by separations in September, as well as Russian personnel and equipment on the territory of Ukraine. U.S. Ambassador Samuel Power told the UN Security Council, "Let us put the veil away from Putin's peace plan and call it what it is, a Russian occupational plan," she said during a special meeting of the 15-member body of the Ukraine. Putin floated the proposal to end a conflict in which more than 4,800 people have died since last April to Ukraine. President Petro Poroshenko last week, but Moscow said on Sunday Poroshenko rejected the plan. Putin's spokesman said that the proposal called for the ceasefire by the government's forces and separatist militants in the southeastern Ukraine. and the heavy withdrawal of artillery by both sides. Power said it was the plan that would free Russia from the comments made to Minsk in the withdrawal in its fights and to return control over the international border to the Ukraine. Time again, President Putin has extended on an olive branch in one hand while passing out grand missiles and tanks with the other, she said.
Cuban official says U.S.-Cuba talks are going smoothly. The highest level U.S. delegation to Cuba in 35 years began talks on Wednesday, January 21st, to focus on immigration and restoring diplomatic ties between two adversaries who have been locked in Cold War-era hostilities. The 2 days of meetings are the first since U.S. Barack Obama and Cuban President Raul Castro announced on December 17th they have reached a historic breakthrough after 18 months of secret negotiations. Talks will focus on immigration on Wednesday and turn to restoring diplomatic ties on Thursday, January 22nd. Gustavo Machin, the deputy to the chief of the Cuban Foreign Ministry's U.S. division, said talks were progressing smoothly. Well, the two delegations has been talking on the very respectful way we have been analyzing our exchanges about the immigration trends between our two countries. I think that we have many points of coincidence in the way we are dealing. We congratulate each other because of the fluent communication that exists between the Coast Guard of the United States and Cuban border patrols, he said. Both sides are also expected to outline longer-term goals. While Cuba will seek the repeal of Washington's 53-year-old economic embargo and ask to be removed from the U.S. list of state sponsors of terrorism, the Americans will press the one-year party state for greater human rights.
Hillary Clinton says additional sanctions on Iraq would be a strategic error. Potential 2016 presidential candidate Hillary Clinton on Wednesday, January 21st, said additional congressional sanctions on Iran would create an excuse for Iran, Russia, and China to back out of its ongoing talks. So if we were the reason, though our Congress, that is in effect, gives Iran and others the excuse not to continue the negotiation, that would be, in my view, very serious strategic error, Clinton said during an event in Winnipeg. The former Secretary of State said that insofar as we know, Iran has put its nuclear program on hold during the negotiations, creating a status quo that remains in the interest of the United States. Why do we want to be the catalyst for the collapse of negotiations until we really know whether there is something that we can get out of them that will make the world safer? Avoid an arms race in the Middle East. Can you imagine? Clinton added. Clinton spoke to about 2,000 people at the Winnipeg Convention Center and spoke on a wide range of global topics.
Kerry accuses pro-Russia rebels of blatant land grab in Ukraine. The U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry accused pro-Russian separatists on Wednesday, January 21st, of attempting a blatant land grab during fresh fighting in eastern Ukraine. Speaking at a news conference with the European Union Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini, Kerry said that the U.S. was particularly concerned by a rebel initiative to attempt to gain control of a very significant rail juncture in eastern Ukraine. He said that was in violation of September's ceasefire deal, calling it an effort to try to broaden the amount of territory that is being held. Kerry said there had been about 500 square mile extension of the line of control, which demarcates the rebel-held territory from the rest of the Ukraine. So this is a blatant land grab and is in direct contravention to the Minsk agreements which they signed up to, Kerry added. The U.S. and EU have together imposed sanctions on Russia, which have contributed to a downtown. The EU sanctions are due to be reviewed on March after 1 year in force, but Mogherini stressed that any kind of decision on sanctions is going to be based only on the full implementation of Minsk's agreement. It is in the hands of the Russians now to fulfill their own commitments, and that is going to be the only basis on which the European Union is going to decide any further steps in sanctions, she said. She urged Moscow to fulfill all the commitments it had undertaken in signing the accords in the Belarus capital last year.
Fire takes over New Jersey apartment building. A fire in Edgewater, New Jersey, across the Hudson River from New York City, forced residents to evacuate an apartment building Wednesday evening, January 21st. The fire alarm broke out the building shortly after 4:30 p.m. local time. It quickly engulfed the luxury apartment complex, according to reporters. Firefighters believe that they had the fire under control, but flames escalated in the back of the burning building through multiple units, forcing 400 people to vacate the building. Parts of the building collapsed, sending embers into the neighborhood communities. The massive blaze could be seen from buildings across to the Midtown Manhattan.
Texas plans to execute on Wednesday, January 21st, a man who was convicted of stabbing 3 people to death with a screwdriver, including his great-uncle and great-aunt in San Antonio, a home robbery in 1993. Arnold Presto's execution by injection is planned for 6 p.m. Central Standard Time at the state's prison death chamber in Huntsville. If it takes place, Presto, 41, will be the 519th person executed in Texas since the U.S. Supreme Court reinstated the death penalty in 1976, the most of any state. Presto and 2 other men went to the home of Rodolfo Rodriguez, 72, and his wife, Virginia, 62, who cooked the visitors' breakfast. Presto and Jesse Hernandez then used screwdrivers to attack the couple, also killing Paula Moran, 92, who was in the house. The Texas Attorney General's office said. The 3 ransacked the house, stealing cash and goods valued at a few $100s, it said. Hernandez was under 18 years of age at the time of the crime and could not be sentenced to death because he was a minor. He is currently serving a life sentence. The other person with the assailants, Lupe Hernandez, brother of Jesse, was not charged. As of Tuesday afternoon, no appeals seeking a halt of Presto's execution has been filed.
Microsoft to give away Windows 10. Microsoft Corporation will give away its upcoming Windows 10 operating system as a free upgrade to users of most recent versions of Windows and Windows phones, as the world's largest software company tries to retain customers in the mobile era. The free strategy is a calculated gamble for Microsoft, designed to put Windows in as many devices as possible. The company would then make up for lost revenue by selling services such as Office over the Internet or cloud. During an event in Wednesday in Redmond, Washington, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella said that the company's advances will make it a more seamless experience for Windows users. Windows 10 users in an era of more personal computing in a mobile-first, cloud-first world. We are building into Windows the experience from productivity to gaming, how Spartan and the browser comes together, and how Xbox comes together to endure that seamless crossover across devices as you move around at home or at work. We want to make Windows 10 the most loved version of Windows, said Nadella. The immediate revenue hit is unlikely to be large, as Microsoft gets no more than $500 million of its $20 billion or annual Windows revenue from upgrades, analysts said. The vast majority of Windows revenue comes from hardware, making installing it on a new personal computer and business paying for multi-year licenses. Investors were not impressed. Microsoft shares fell 1% to $45.91 on NASDAQ shortly before the close. We'll be back after the commercial for more news from Asia.